In the book, she shares advice on how to make the mother-daughter bond stronger. I recently spoke with Dr. Mintle about this powerful connection. And Linda's new book, I Love My Mother, But, is hot off the press. And Linda, why do you feel the topic of mother-daughter relationships is so important?
Well, it's one of the most powerful bonds that you can have as a mother and daughter. Very close. Women identify with each other. This is the role model we have for growing up as daughters. But I think more importantly is that your relationship with your mom has everything to do with every other intimate relationship that follows.
Wow.
It's kind of like one of the prototypes. So feminists say that we marry our mothers.
Oh, dear.
But I think we do a little of both. I think we marry a little of our moms, a little of our dads, but we certainly learn the patterns of how to deal with anger, conflict, all kinds of issues when we're growing up that we carry over into our other relationships.
Is that because we want so much for our moms to accept us and approve of us?
That is really the underlying thing, that we all want to be accepted, we all want to be validated, we all want unconditional love. And moms are people, they're women who have their own failings and wounds and hurts from their own growing up experiences, and we're not always able to give that every single time, so it creates this tension. When the expectations are high and maybe the reality isn't quite matching up, then there's a natural rub between mothers and daughters.
Now, why do you think mothers and daughters butt heads more than perhaps any other relationships? And I know it's true in my case as well, you know.
A lot of times it's because we're very much like our mothers when we're the daughters. So if you have a similar personality and you're strong and you're opinionated and you kind of go at each other like that, there's this normal tension. But it's normal to have issues with your mom, and that's what I want people to understand. It's not, you don't have to be pathological or have some really horrific relationship in order to have tension. Conflict is normal because a daughter is trying to grow up and have this identity where she's her own person, but she has to do that by staying attached to her mom. And so this balance of closeness and distance is always getting negotiated.
Yeah, and how do you do that? Because you need to be close, but mothers also, there needs to be a separateness as well, right?
Right, right. And the way you do that is you define who you are. And it's so important to work on your own identity issues and then do that by having a relationship with your mom. Don't do it by cutting your mom off and saying, I'm going to be independent. I'm just going to cut her off and then I can be who I want to be. But you work on your own, who you are, because I always tell young moms, the best gift that they can give their daughters is to work it out with their own mothers. Because the principles at work in that relationship are the same principles you're going to use for all your other relationships.
Linda, what if there's been so much pain, so much hurt, so much misunderstanding, and those walls go up because you don't want to feel any more pain, yet you don't want to have any regrets either?
Right, right.
How do you not ignore the pain and deal with it?
Well, a lot of people choose to ignore, and that's a real problem because, again, it follows you into your other relationships, so you don't want to do that. There are a lot of people that have had alcoholic moms, abusive moms, moms who were neglectful, who weren't there, maybe mentally ill, and I give a lot of practical help on how to deal with that in the book. It has a lot to do with those expectations, has a lot to do with setting boundaries in the relationship, understanding where you begin and she ends and where the two come together, has a lot to do with developing an empathy for who your mom is and maybe seeing her as a woman in a different generation with her own issues, putting yourself in her place, but also exercising a lot of forgiveness and grace.
And boundaries.
And boundaries and working through the conflicts. That's the most important. It's not whether you're going to have conflict, because you will, but it's whether or not you're going to work through that conflict and try to resolve your issues.
Yeah. Now, what if your mother has passed on? How do you deal with those unresolved issues?
Well, I address that also in the book. So the book really goes the gamut of very positive relationship to very difficult to pass on. I got a lot of response and email, Wendy, from viewers who said she's passed, but she's in dementia or Alzheimer's, and I can't work on it anymore. And you can. Again, there are chapters in the book that help you go through the issues of maybe the things that were unresolved, that you were hurt, doing things like writing a letter that you obviously can't send at this point, and then working through each of the points in forgiveness. A lot of it has to do with forgiveness and letting go of that anger and hurt and the wounding and grieving losses. Maybe the mother was the mother that you never really had in the way you wanted her, and knowing how to grieve that loss so you can move from stuck to unstuck.
And of course, God promises to heal our wounds and to be our mother and father. If your parents forsake you, he says, I will be your parent. So we always have the Lord to
fill in those gaps.
Fill in the gaps.
That's right. That's right.
But this is a timely book with Mother's Day this weekend. I Love My Mother, But is hot off the press, and you can find it on Linda's website, lindamintle.com, or wherever books are sold.